Sorry. Good afternoon and welcome to Wednesday Workshops with Whitney. I will be your host, Whitney, and I'm going to give us a minute or two and then I will get started. All right, well, I'm going to get started. So, welcome to Wednesday Workshops with Whitney. I will be your host, Whitney. On today's episode, we will be discussing coping skills to help you return to normal life after the pandemic, which was a little over a year ago when it started. So, but before we get started, let's start with our icebreaker activity. So today, I was going to read a sentence and then you fill in the end of it. So, I'm going to read the sentence and then you fill in the blank. If you'd like to share your response, that would be great. If you're not comfortable sharing your response, that is okay. Okay, so I'm going to read a sentence that isn't complete, and then you can complete it with your own response. All right, so on the weekend, I love to ... So on the weekend, I love to, and then you would put in your response. So if you'd like to share, you can type it in the chat box or you can text message my work phone, which Modensi does sometimes. All right, so on the weekend, I love to All right, well, I will share mine then. On the weekend, I love to sleep in and watch movies. So that's something that I enjoy doing over the weekend. I thought this would be a good question because we're talking about coping skills. Oh, great, Doris, thank you. Doris says on the weekend, she loves to visit my grandson. Thank you for sharing. Awesome, because since we're talking about coping skills today, I thought, what better way than to ask a question about something that you love to do? And coping skills can be spending time with family. Is definitely some coping skills for people. So I'm so glad that you shared that. Thanks, Doris. All right, if anyone else wants to share, they can. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns while we are in this workshop, feel free to type it in the chat box. And I will continue on. So, I found an article in inverse.com, and it was called Use These Handy Coping Mechanisms to to help you return to normal life by Sarah Slout. So I'm going to read it, kind of stop and talk about certain things. If you want to share any of your own, coping skills you may have that have helped you during the pandemic, feel free to. And if you have any comments about anything that I am saying, you can share that as well. Okay, so during the pandemic, Janet Ray Dupree bought an e-bike. It has saved my sanity, she tells Inverse. She's loved cycling her whole life, and after some experimentation with an old mountain bike, she invested in an e-bike, which, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I think it might be an electronic bike, so one where you can pedal, but you can also turn on, I don't know, like it turns on and it can bike you around. Electronic bike. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I figured that's what it meant. Cool. So now she masks up and glides along the bluffs near her home in Half Moon Bay, California. Ray Dupree especially loves a sunset ride. When she faces an incline or uphill, she bumps the pedal assist to turbo to help her go up the hill. Getting outdoors, enjoying plenty of exercise, and feeling like a kid on my new toy all lifts my spirits anytime the pandemic starts to wear me down, she says. Using the e-bike is what Ray Dupree describes as her pandemic coping mechanism. So that's pretty great because exercise releases endorphins, or it's like a natural high, so it makes you feel good, as well as getting out in the fresh air and the sunshine can also help your mood. She is one of a group of 30 Inverse readers who told us about their coping mechanisms in the face of the phenomenal stress the COVID-19 pandemic created. They might just help you face what's ahead. The healthy coping strategies people use are idiosyncratic as they are familiar. While what steers us to choose differs, guided by bias, randomness, and preference, it's easy to empathize with why someone would, for example, embrace puzzling or birding. Those activities sound nice. You might just be more of a cook. Sometimes I've heard a lot of people that enjoy baking. Dr. Melanie Badali, a registered psychologist, tells Inverse this pandemic will likely have significant psychological effects long after something like herd immunity is achieved. Although we can't be certain of the repercussions because we are still in it, experts and preliminary research suggest that there will be mental health repercussions, Badaldi says, adding, we need to act now to prevent an echo pandemic of mental health problems and help people who have been negatively affected. This echo pandemic, also referred to as a second pandemic, will affect us even after the vaccines roll out, Dr. Wright tells Inverse. And I think that's important to think about because as the pandemic has gone on, there's been so many articles about the stress and increases in, anxiety, depression, substance use, suicidal thoughts and actions, and, kids not being in school for long periods of time, people having to work from home, some people living by themselves, and all the loneliness. So when things start to look closer to the normal we used to know, we may still have those mental health effects. So it's really important to figure out what activities or people you want to surround yourself with that make you feel good. Wright, the Senior Director of Healthcare Innovation at the American Psychological Association, points to the new APA Stress in America survey released 1 year after the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. The report echoes concurrent messaging from other organizations tracking mental health, and the truth is clear. More Americans are reporting high levels of, just like I said, anxiety, depression, substance use, and suicidal ideation. There are 4 groups in particular that have demonstrated additional vulnerability, Wright says. 1, younger adults. 2, parents with children under the age of 18, so kids that are still living at home. And there may be kids older than that still living at home, but that would be kind of high school level and under of children. 3, individuals from communities of color, and 4, essential workers. Flickering through all of this, like froth on a wave, is an intuitive response hardwired in human beings, resilience. And I think I actually have a video on our HHCD YouTube page about resilience, so you might want to check that out. Resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health issues, or workplace and financial stressors. Being resilient doesn't mean that problems just disappear, but it can mean that you found a way to make a sticky situation more manageable. So it's kind of like how you bounce back from negative events that happen in our lives, or also with change. When an international team of researchers tracked Google Trends from January to June of 2020, they found at the start, most searches had to do with COVID-19 and practicalities like furloughs. So in the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were searching about COVID-19 and, furloughs, like people being kind of laid off of their jobs temporarily. Over time, the Google queries with the most growth were no longer related to COVID-19 as the initial panic faded. Topics associated with coping and resilience, like exercise and learning new skills, remain constant though. So that's actually great, because that means that after the initial panic, although I'm sure most of us were still stressed out throughout, people wanted to know, how do I cope with this immense stress that's not going away? Like, how can I help myself feel better? And I think that gives me hope. The pandemic has taught me to look inward, retool some of my life skills. Inverse reader Alan Hetherington says, I truly believe our next step as human beings is to become more present while dealing with what is in the moment. So that's kind of if you think about it, it has a lot to do with like mindfulness meditation, or being present in the moment instead of worrying about the future, which is easier said than done, but it's a great practice to get into. Finding a healthy coping mechanism, right? The APA psychologist emphasizes the need for a balance between healthy and not so healthy coping mechanisms. A glass of wine at the end of a long day is fine, but not, 5 or 10 glasses of wine. But Dolly agrees coping strategies are not one size fits all. Sometimes a strategy that is helpful in one situation can be harmful in another. Dolly encourages her patients to develop a coping toolbox, a repertoire of skills that match the moment. So finding out what activities or skills you can do more than just one thing. So if we go back to the first example of the lady who got the e-bike, she enjoys biking and she might even be able to bike in the rain, but let's say she's having a really hard day and there's a thunderstorm outside. It might not be the safest time to ride her bike, but if that's her only coping skill, then she might struggle. So I think it's important, like she's saying, to have multiple coping skills or coping activities that you like. Walking 3 to 5 miles while listening to music and breathing in fresh air, especially delicious in a light rain, inverse reader Mark Wilson said. While it may seem obvious that there are different types of coping mechanisms, some lean into exercise while others may some may use exercise, others may read more. Coping is divided categorically as well. So there's problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. Problem-focused means engaging with the outside world. To cope, people can learn steps for solving problems and then routinely go through them when problems arise. Emotion-focused coping is directed more inward. There are a handful of strategies we can develop into healthy habits that regulate our emotions. Vidali explains. These include good nutrition, regular exercise, healthy thinking, and meaningful actions. Okay. If the weather allows, I go for walks with our little dog, Cognac. Inverse reader Angela Bird says. So this is throughout is some of the readers what they use as coping skills. So it kind of seems randomly placed, but I think it's great to get different people's opinions of what they use to cope. Because sometimes somebody might have a coping skill that you've never heard of before, but you can end up using it in your life. So new coping strategies can, in turn, improve our resilience or ability to bounce back from adversity and negative life experiences. I think it's important to keep in mind that it's not just about making things a habit, but using the best tool for the task at hand, Vidali says. And the task at hand will be different for various people. Take Arthur Beaker, another reader we interviewed. He plays fiddle and mandolin and has taken to playing his instruments on the front porch or back patio, weather permitting. That's really great because if you're a musician, I know that playing instruments can be super helpful. My friend's husband is actually a professional washboard player, so he loves playing that instrument. But also you got to think about during the pandemic, musicians struggled a lot because if they were used to playing live at maybe bars or clubs, they weren't able to for a long time. Okay. People are so hungry for community, they listen, Beaker tells Inverse. I don't play all that well, but it seems a treat for them as well as an outlet for me since the social jams that I usually attend are locked down, Beaker says. The wife takes the dog on walks around the neighborhood. And if the neighbors don't know who we are, at least they know that's the house where the fiddler lives. I like that. That's funny. All right. To get out of the house, Laura Connolly explores historical places of interest, cemeteries, and generally lovely places. She's found herself at sites in and around Portland, Oregon, such as Riverview Cemetery, Peninsula Park, and Mount Angel Seminary. My partner and I have enjoyed these outings with very few problems with social distancing, while being amazed by how relevant the past is to the present, Connolly tells Inverse. Meanwhile, Virginia Carpio explores a different way. She looks at maps online. She selects a place somewhere in the world and absorbs information about temples, fortresses, seaports, and mountain passes. She looks at historical maps at countries she never knew existed. Sometimes she looks at maps of the universe. I love that one. because you don't really think about it. Sometimes, like, if you're going on a trip, you might research the place that you're going and kind of like what are interesting places to visit. But I think that's really great because just like reading a book, researching another place kind of in your mind can take you somewhere else. And I think that can be super great with coping. So I might try that one. I have traveled a lot and hope to resume visiting interesting locations all over the planet next year. So maps are naturally interesting to me anyway, Carpio tells Inverse. They absorb my attention, and before I know it, an hour or even an afternoon has passed by. So I think what's great about coping skills, just with what she said, is that if we're really enjoying something, we don't focus on the time because we're enjoying the present moment. So for me, one of my coping skills that I've used my entire life is creating art. Painting or coloring or jewelry making or collaging. If I'm making some sort of art, and it doesn't even have to be good, but I'm making some sort of art, I forget where I'm at and I don't stress out about things that are happening in my life. So think about things that maybe you do, such as Dora said, visiting her grandson, where you're not concentrated on your problems around stressful situations. You're enjoying what you're doing because those are coping skills. All right. We've adjusted to this way, and now we have to readjust. I don't know if you've ever heard, what is that term? Or some, like a life saying of something like the only thing that's constant is change. Because things are constantly changing, and just like they did for the pandemic, you know, we're going to have to keep readjusting to the changes that continue to happen. The next chapter, what remains to be seen, is what we'll do with the skills we've learned in the pandemic. Wright points out that in the APA, or I think that's the American Psychological Association Stress in America survey, almost 50% of adults said they're uncomfortable or concerned about returning to pre-pandemic life. So 50% of people said they're nervous for things to go back to normal, or what back to normal would look like after being in situations where we were forced to be away from one another. Or I think about when I'm walking down the street, you know, before the pandemic, I'd see someone, I'd say, hey, how are you? You know, and then during the pandemic, it was like walking down the street and you see someone and you get all nervous and you're like, should I cross the street? Am I going to be able to have enough space between us? And then after, it's like, it would take some time to get back to being like, oh, is it okay for me to be close to a stranger? Or am I still going to be nervous that maybe I'm going to get sick? All right. I think that's in part because change is hard, right? Wright says, we've adjusted to this way and now we have to readjust, and it takes a lot of effort. There's also still a lot of uncertainty, and you're still left with asking yourself, what is safe? I think it's absolutely normal to feel some trepidation and some anxiety about what things will look like going forward. It's possible that life will never fully return to normal, Badali says. Some risk-adverse people, for example, may continue to withdraw from the outside world. Well, I'm hopeful that it gets back to some sort of normalcy. But I guess it is always important to be aware that things may not be the same. The key to making the transition to whatever comes next, Wright says, is not judging yourself too harshly. There's space to grieve, and there's space to have some gratitude for the good you've encountered in the past 12 months. There's space for loss, and there's space to reflect on what's been gained. Feeling like a cog in the wheel of a tectonic shift, as adverse reader Alan Hetherington puts it, can give you solace. It can also be nice to make some mail art, like the mail, which Megan Miller tells in First she's ramped up significantly in pandemic times. Okay, so maybe writing letters to people. It's calming to make art and send it off into the world. Yeah, Miller says. And it has made the postal carrier someone to look forward to again. Something to look forward to is sometimes all that's necessary. The first step is engaging with an action that makes your life healthier. The future will take it from there. All right, so that was the article. What did you think about the article? Did you take any of the coping skills they talked about that maybe you'd like? Like, I liked how the woman started talking about researching different places around the world. Or is there any coping skill you may use that you'd like to share? Well, I can share too. So besides making art, other things I enjoy doing that make me feel good are some form of exercise. For a while, I was doing maybe 10 or 15 minutes of Zumba a couple times a week, and that made me really happy. I like going on walks outside. I like listening to music. When I'm kind of feeling depressed or anxious, I like to put on that free app Pandora, and I do Disco Station because for me, if I listen to disco, I smile and laugh. I think it's happy music, so I enjoy it. Oh, great, Steve. Steve said some of his coping skills are swimming and listening to music. Oh, that's great. Absolutely. It doesn't always have to be exercise, although exercise does make you feel better. Other coping skills, Doris says, I'm afraid to start back my water aerobics classes. And that's understandable, absolutely. But I'm sure that when you used to do them, they were something you really enjoyed. And I'm sure at some point you'll be able to do them again, but it is understandable that you may feel a bit anxious about going back to them. But I'm glad that that's something that you have done. I've done water aerobics before, and it was a lot of fun. I think that sometimes you think about the swimming pool, maybe once it gets warmer, being able to go to the pool outside because there's more kind of air around you and around other people than maybe an indoor pool. What are other coping skills might be like mindfulness meditation, cooking. Like I said, I have a lot of friends that like baking, watching movies, reading a book. I'm just trying to come up with a bunch. Taking a bath. Sometimes people enjoy putting like Epsom salt in the bath and listening to relaxing music, kind of giving yourself some me time. And I think that's important with coping skills as well. As a coping skill might be also, talking to a family member or a friend, which is great, but also kind of like, what are some things that you can do alone? Also, making like a gratitude list. What are some things you're grateful for, or journaling, or talking on the phone with someone you care about. It's just a list of some. But yeah, coping skills are really important because they're how we can handle stress so that we're not constantly worrying about what the future might bring or what are some maybe negative aspects that are happening in our life. Great. Oh, and like I always say, if you ever have any topics you want me to present on, feel free to let me know because I'm always I like taking suggestions as well. Okay, so now, lastly, we're going to do our okay, let's see. going to walk us through a body scan exercise, and it is from our Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions. I've been using this a lot lately. If you're interested, Steve and I are going to be facilitating a class through Zoom in the next couple months. It's all about learning how to live a healthy and happy life with a chronic condition. And it's a class that we took, and I loved it. And I really like that in this book, and you would get this book if you took the class, there's different scripts. Like the one I did last week, I think, was A Walk on the Beach, and that was a guided imagery. But yeah, so all right. So if you're sitting, you might want to put your feet flat on the floor. Try to straighten your back and your hands on your lap or to your side. If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes, but you don't have to. All right. Okay. As you get into a comfortable position, allowing yourself to begin to sink comfortably into the surface below you, you may perhaps begin to allow your eyes gradually to close. From there, turn your attention to your breath. Breathing in, allowing the breath gradually to go all the way down to your belly. And then breathing out. And again, breathing in and out. Noticing the natural rhythm of your breathing. Now, allowing your attention to focus on your feet. Starting with your toes, notice whatever sensations are there. Warmth, coolness, whatever is there. Simply feel it. Using your mind's eye, imagine that as you breathe in, the breath goes all the way down into your toes, bringing with it new, refreshing air. And now, noticing the sensations elsewhere in your feet. Not judging or thinking about what you're feeling, but simply becoming aware of the experience of your feet as you allow yourself to be fully supported by the surface below you. Next, focus on your lower legs and knees. These muscles and joints do a lot of work for us, but often we don't give them the attention they deserve. So now, breathe down into the knees, calves, and ankles, noticing whatever sensations appear. See if you can simply stay with the calves and ankles. See if you can simply stay with the sensations, breathing in new fresh air, and as you exhale, releasing tension and stress and allowing the muscles to relax and soften. Now, move your attention to the muscles, bones, and joints of the thighs, buttocks, and hips. Breathing down into the upper legs, noticing whatever sensations you experience. It may be warmth, coolness, a heaviness, or lightness. You may become aware of the contact with the surface beneath you, or perhaps the pulsing of your blood. Whatever is there, what matters is that you are taking time to learn to relax. Deeper and deeper as you breathe. In and out. Move your attention now to your back and chest. Feeling the breath fill the abdomen and chest. Noticing whatever sensations are there. Not judging or thinking, but simply observing what is right here, right now. Allowing the fresh air to nourish the muscles, bones, and joints as you breathe in and then exhaling any tension and stress. Now, focus on the neck, shoulders, arms, and hands. Inhaling down through the neck and shoulders, all the way down to your fingertips. Not trying too hard to relax, but simply becoming aware of your experience of these parts of your body in the present moment. Turning now to your face and head. Notice the sensations beginning at the back of your head, up along your scalp, and down into your forehead. Then become aware of the sensations in and around your eyes and down into your cheeks and jaw. Continue to allow your muscles to release and soften as you breathe in, nourishing fresh air, and allow tension and stress to leave as you breathe out. As you drink in fresh air, allow it to spread throughout your body, from the soles of your feet all the way up through the top of your head. And then exhale any remaining stress and tension. And now take a few moments to enjoy the stillness as you breathe in and out. Awake, relaxed, and still. Now, as the body scan comes to a close, coming back into the room, bringing with you whatever sensations of relaxation, comfort, peace, whatever's there. Knowing that you can repeat this exercise at any appropriate time and place of your choosing. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, great. So, I enjoy body scans. Actually, if you go onto YouTube and you look up, here, I'll type it in. This is the person I like. It's John Kabat-Zinn. He is great. He has body scan exercises that I think the least is like 15 minutes, which may seem like a lot, but he is phenomenal. I think he's really great. So thank you all for coming. And as always, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can type them in or email or text message me if you have any topics you'd like. But I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and thanks again for coming. Bye-bye.